We've got these rival gatherings in Cairo. We can see one of them here, and really they symbolise the huge divisions within Egyptian society at the moment. Over the next hour, we're going to be live with guests in Cairo, also in New York, and with all of you around the world, we're going to talk about how to deliver stability to Egypt's politics and also to its streets. If you'd like to take part, we're live here on BBC World News. This is our phone number. You can get us on social media, and if you'd like to Skype us, we're waiting for your call.
People are going to want to know.
Let's just say something.
And if you do get in touch with us on Twitter, Facebook and Google+, all of those messages come straight to me here in the studio. I'll do my very best to work in your suggestions for how to resolve this ongoing crisis in Egypt. Now, let me introduce you to our first few guests. We're joined by Soraya Bagat in Cairo. Also, while we're talking to them, you can see the live pictures of the pro-Morsi protest which is taking place in Cairo. We've got Soraya Bagat, a Cairo businesswoman and activist from the BBC Arabic Bureau in Cairo. Fidel Solomon, author and filmmaker, who's live with us from Cairo. And Maga Atiyah in New York, an American-Egyptian physicist and businessman. Well, perhaps, Fidel, we could start with you. How could you plot a way out of this crisis to a place where Egyptians can at least agree on how to organize their country?
I believe that we can fix what's happening if Egyptians see their fellow Egyptians as human beings, not as zombies. Those people in Rabaa and in Nahda Square are Egyptians like them, and they are not tens of thousands like your presenter mentioned. We are at least 3 to 4 million in Rabaa and at least 2 million in Nahda Square, and there's a lot others who are rallying the streets right now of every Egyptian governorate, not supporting Morsi, but supporting democracy. I wish that all your audience also follow us on our hashtag on Twitter, pro-democracy. We didn't call it pro-Morsi. I am one of the lemon squeezer, by the way. I am someone who did not elect Morsi in the first round, but I elected him in the second round. And a lemon squeezer is a term that we use in Egypt for someone who is doing something that he doesn't really want to do. So I was someone who squeezed a lot of lemon to elect him, but I want my vote respected. I don't want my vote trashed.
Well, I've never heard anyone on World Have You Say call themselves a lemon squeeze before. I appreciate you explaining that. And those of you watching, I wonder if you have sympathy with Fidel's point that, look, he voted for this man. He didn't vote for him first time, but in the second round he did. Now he wants him still as his president. And that's what a lot of the protesters that we can see there would like. Now, Soraya, let's bring you in. What would you do from this very difficult situation?
Well, I agree with Fadl's point of view that it starts with viewing the other as a human being. While we're on different sides of the spectrum with regards to the ouster of Morsi, I definitely believe that the way forward is first most a national reconciliation and also respecting the rule of law when it comes to the arrests of the Muslim Brotherhood. Our happiness with the ouster of Morsi was unfortunately overshadowed by the many arrests of Muslim Brotherhood members and the closing of the TV channels without proper legal process. We understand that this is, due to incitement for violence, etc. But the way we deal with the Muslim Brotherhood moving forward will pretty much determine what kind of a democracy we have. So we need to ensure that the human rights are respected and the arrest warrants are issued based on concrete and solid accusations.
So you want the Muslim Brotherhood to be properly respected. Fidel, I wonder what would need to happen for you to believe that that were true, that that was happening, that the army accepts the Muslim Brotherhood has a place?
There's a big problem right now because actually what happened is a military coup, and I believe that the army will not let it go that easy because this means that they can be tried, and I believe that they should call for a referendum. I actually had my initiative that says that General Sisi should retract his resolution, and President Morsi, the elected president, the legitimate president, should call and invite Egyptians for a referendum, whether they want an early elections or not. And this referendum should be after Eid, which means after maybe 30 days from now, about on the 15th of August, and the early elections can be within 6 months. And this is exactly what the others want. The problem now is, and this is what I want Ms. Soraya to answer me. I believe that from her tone that she was one of the people who rallied the streets against Morsi on the 30th of June. Do you deny that a big group of people among you on the 30th of June were the pro-Mubarak or not?
Just as he was making his point, he's cut out. Soraya, did you hear enough of that to be able to respond?
Yes. I don't deny that there were some pro-Mubarak amongst the protesters, but the protesters were largely heterogeneous compared to the pro-Morsi rally, which was, by many accounts, homogeneous and mostly comprised of Muslim Brotherhood members and Islamist supporters. So while I do address the fact that, yes, there were some pro-Morsi, but there were many other people from all walks of Egyptian life, also many conservative people with Islamist tendencies, so it was a larger spectrum of Egyptian population than present at the pro-Morsi demonstrations.
Soraya, thank you very much indeed. For the moment, Fidel, thank you to you too. We'll speak in just a moment to Maget, live with us from New York. First of all, let me just quickly show you this video. It's from Cairo. Have a look at it.
Hi, my name's Karim. I'm from Cairo. I'm 21 years old. The way I see Egypt being fixed is that we need more political education in the way that you need to teach people how to listen to others, how to accept others, how to sort of actually listen to an argument, make points, and then argue those points after they're finished talking. Because a lot of Egyptians are they just think they're right and the opposition is wrong. They don't try to argue, they don't try to make their point, they don't try to convince. And that's a problem, not just with Islamists, but it's a problem with a lot of revolutionaries as well.
Karim, thank you very much indeed. By the way, if you're watching and thinking, I'd like to send a video in to contribute to World Have Your Say, go to worldhaveyoursay.com. It's incredibly easy to do. Let's put that point to Maget, live with us from New York. Do you think Karim's right that Egyptians don't have a tradition of political discourse? They need to learn how to talk with each other, negotiate with each other, debate with each other?
He's partly right. I think Egyptians do need to stop just talking over each other and start listening to each other. It's obviously that the events of July 3rd were unfortunate. No one can approve of removing a president that way. On the other hand, they were really a follow-up to the November 22nd events, where President Morsi declared himself essentially above all laws in order to pass a constitution that a lot of people felt was against their wishes, against their identity. So what we have a situation here is of sort of two wrongs piling up on each other. And what Egyptians need to do, I believe, is step back a bit, accept each other, listen to each other, and find a way to work together, knowing that Egypt is simply too big for just one faction to rule and dominate, that it's big enough for all different political currents to work together.
I suppose the issue, and I'm sure those of you watching in Egypt, I know lots of you watch BBC World News there, do contribute to World Have Your Say. I just wonder if you think this is a long-term thing, developing political discourse. How do you get the two sides speaking to each other right now? Because after all, this is a pressing issue, isn't it? Let's bring in my colleague from BBC Arabic, Awa Assem's live with us from the World's newsroom. Awa, your listeners and viewers across the Arabic world, are they frustrated with the tone of the discussion in Egypt?
Well, actually, what people are saying in Egypt reflects a very polarized society and a very polarized media scene. What your first guest said about the solution is actually for each party to look at the other party as fellow human beings and fellow Egyptians who have the same rights. This is easily said than done. In Egypt now, with the closure of all the stations, the TV stations that were pro-Morsi, all the Islamic stations, We have a media scene dominated by the other camp, if you like, which is also dominated by the remnants of the previous regime, presenters from the remnants of the previous regime. So we have an extremely polarized situation there. We have an extremely polarized media scene. The pro-Morsi camp only listen to what is being said in Rabaa al-Adawiya on the platform of Rabaa al-Adawiya, what their leaders have to tell them. And all the rest of Egypt, they have to listen to what the remnants of Mubarak's regime have to tell them on a TV screen. So it's really a very, very difficult situation and a very polarized situation, as I said.
Well, let's pick up on a couple of the things you mentioned with our guests. Perhaps with you first, Soraya. If we all accept, and you all seem to say this, that people are talking past each other, they're not listening, they're not engaging with each other, what can possibly be done to resolve that in the next few days or weeks?
Wow, it's quite complex, but I think immediately we need to have a campaign to legalize whatever arrests were made. Muslim Brotherhood members who were arrested without warrants, without any accusations, should be released, and also the closure of the TV channels should be justified. And that also includes closing any other anti-Morsi channels who are also inciting violence. I think we need to really, and I cannot emphasize this enough, work towards respecting due process and not launching a witch hunt against the Muslim Brotherhood and its supporters right now just because they are no longer in power.
Well, Emmanuel in Zambia is watching us. He agrees exactly with the point you're making about the Muslim Brotherhood. He said things definitely won't improve by arresting the leaders of the single biggest political party. I don't even understand what the charges are. What about you, Fidel, the self-styled lemon squeezer? What would you do to squeeze the two sides of this division together, get them talking to each other in a civil way?
I believe that things should be in order first. There is a legitimate president. There is democracy that we fought for in January 25th. We cannot go back to the era of military coups. I believe that, number one, the people who are supporting the military coup, especially from democratic countries like the US and Europe, should stop defending a military coup. It is a military coup, even though it is supported by a big group of people, but there is another big group of people too who are against them, and the military should have not sided with one group of the people against the other. So number one, the side in power today should not feel empowered more and more by so-called democratic countries, actually. If they are really democratic, if they are really pro-democracy.
And actually, the issue of whether this is a coup isn't just a debate about semantics. It's actually more important than that, particularly in terms of the kind of assistance that the US offers Egypt. There's supposed to be a delivery of some new fighter jets, but the US hasn't confirmed that will go ahead. It's still deciding whether to categorize this as a coup. If it's called a coup, then the American Constitution says that certain things cannot be provided to a government which has come into power if it's been put into power with a coup. So that's why this word is so important. We're going to carry on talking with our guests. Remember, if you want to get involved, we're live here on BBC World News. Back in just a couple of minutes.
No, I absolutely talking about it.
Let me say something. No,
I absolutely talking about it.
Let me say something.
Hi, I'm Ross Atkins. Welcome back to World Have Your Say. As you'd expect, we're talking about Egypt and how to resolve the latest crisis there. Comments coming in from UAE, Ghana, Somalia, Nigeria, Bangladesh. Thanks to all of you watching there. Taku is tuned in Zimbabwe, and he says the only way for Egypt to sort itself out is to reinstate Morsi and then give dialogue a chance. And an interesting point which we can put to some of our new guests who are joining us. Andrew in the US says Egypt can't be fixed because it's ruled by the military. Well, we've already met Maget in New York. He's still with us. Live with us from BBC's Broadcasting House is Baria Alimuddin, foreign editor of Al Hayat newspaper, and Ceylan Erbstok in Istanbul, a political analyst and TV presenter, joins us live too. Well, Baria, let me start with you. Do you think that until the role of the army changes in Egypt, this crisis will just continue to reappear?
Yes, I mean, one would hope that the role of the army would diminish very, very quickly, and the Egyptians are able to come together. This idea of squeezing lemon or otherwise, it does not work in a country. I'm a Lebanese, and we lived a long civil war where everybody tried to squeeze everybody. Well, guess what? They are all Lebanese, we are all Lebanese, and nobody can squeeze anybody out. I hope that the Egyptians realize that fighting and killing does not solve any problem. What needs to happen is trying to build a democratic, secular state. And let's not forget, this is happening when the whole Arab world really is fighting for its mind and soul between the more moderate Muslims and the more militant Muslims. So Egypt is a very important country, a very big country, and what happens in Egypt will affect the whole Arab world.
I guess Egypt should only be a secular state if that's what Egyptians want. Jaylan, let's bring you in. Talk to us about how you view the Egyptian army. Do you think it is an obstacle to democracy or a defender of democracy?
Of course it is an obstacle, and just like she said, I also believe that army is always going to be an obstacle in democracy. Egypt today really resembles 28 February 1997 Turkey, so from that experience I can also say the army must make it very clear that all parties can participate freely in the coming elections, including the Muslim Brotherhood. Clear in word and deed, and if the intention is to create a government by all, to rule a nation for all, then they can't tell me that we don't want Ikhwan to have a say in this. And it's not really so complicated. Sometimes the foundation of a successful government is a belief by people that is working for them in their best interests. So the quickest way to reinforce these ideals is to provide a practical, everyday solution. For example, to prove quality of life in short term, not about GDP, income per capita, or any arcane calculation only a stockbroker would understand. But sometimes it is as simple as keeping the lights on and the trains running on time.
But one moment, Maggot, let me bring you in here. Let's be clear. The millions of anti-Morsi demonstrators would not have got him out of power unless the military had helped their cause. So don't you think the military has served democracy in some way?
Yes, I think there is a role for the Egyptian military in national life. For 200 years, it's been a national institution, a patriotic institution, and it has a role. I'm a believer in secular, democratic government by civilians. And in fact, I take exception to Fadl's statement that the United States, my country, is so-called democratic. I believe it's reasonably democratic. What is needed is for both sides to see what they have done right and what they have done wrong. What they have done right is they stood for freedom 2.5 years ago. What they have done wrong on the side of the Muslim Brotherhood was to pass that constitution in essentially extra-legal means, making a good many Egyptians, perhaps a majority, feel disenfranchised and needing to go to the street. Now, the people who went to the street on June 30th should also realize that removing a president by extra-legal means is not a good thing for the future of the country. So there is wrong on both sides, there is right on both sides. Fadl's point notwithstanding, everyone should just step back now and say, let's amend the Constitution, let's make it a document that everyone can respect so they will obey it, make it a document so that everyone will respect the rules, and then from there on, play by the rules.
But I suppose the point is how you produce a constitution which everyone feels that way about. That is the challenge, isn't it? You're live with us from New York. We have Baria live with us from London, Jaylan in Istanbul. Let me just quickly pull up an editorial which we spotted from Bloomberg, which raises a point which, of course, is at the heart of this discussion. A growing economy that produces jobs is the prerequisite for any lasting solution to Egypt's troubles. Baria, would you agree with that, that actually until Egypt's economy is fixed, there are always going to be problems?
Yes, I think this is a very, very important point. Of course, Gulf countries have been pouring billions into the economy, but this is not enough. Egypt needs 19 billion in aid next year for it to be able to survive. The Egyptian people, many of them are hungry now. There is a problem with wheat, there is a problem with gasoline, there is a problem with practically everything with the economy. Unless there is some kind of security and agreement, then the economy economy cannot move. We know that, for example, tourism is very important for Egypt. The hotels in Egypt are empty. People don't want to go. Every foreign office in the Western world and the world at large is telling its people not to go to Egypt. So the economy, yes, indeed, is very important, but you can't have a good economy without security.
The assistance offered to this interim government is in some way going to be constrained by the fact that it's come to power with the help of the military, something which some of Egypt's partners are distinctly uncomfortable about. I've got a couple of other things to show you here just before we go back to our guest. This is Alvaro de Vasconcelos on projectsyndicate.org. It's a piece called Avoiding Algeria in Egypt. I won't read you the whole thing, although you can easily find it online. He says the EU and the US should demand the liberation of all members of the Muslim Brotherhood, including Morsi, and the integration of the Brotherhood into any political situation. Well, Soraya was making a similar point from Cairo. Ceylan, how do you feel about the arrest of the Muslim Brotherhood? Is it a sign that the army is enforcing the law, or a sign that the army is persecuting certain political beliefs?
Of course, it is a sign that army is persecuting the political beliefs. And if we are going to talk about democracy in Egypt, I have to ask this question: did it ever start? I mean, did the train really leave the station? So, I mean, so many groups were boycotting on the streets from day one. People started protesting and boycotting on the streets from the first week. Democracy is not only about economy or about rules and regulations, but about participation. We need decisions, and decisions happen when people really show up, and we cannot get people to show up when they are only showing up on the streets.
Ceylan, thank you very much to you. Thanks to Baria as well. A couple of comments here. It's interesting how many of you are sympathetic to the Muslim Brotherhood, not because you believe in their political beliefs, just because you're outraged that President Morsi's been removed from office. Kasim in Bangladesh has called up to say this is a threat to democracy. Ishmael in Mauritius says this is making a mockery of the term democracy. President Morsi was democratically elected. I mean, World Have You Say is not a scientific poll, but the majority of you getting in touch have sympathy for the ousted president. Let's go back to Soraya and also Fidel, live with us from Cairo. You both bring different political perspectives. I wonder, though, if you are optimistic as you go into Friday evening in Cairo. Do you think in the next weeks this will be resolved? Soraya, you first, maybe.
The first thing is I actually worried about more violence erupting and bloodshed. I really do hope that both sides restrain themselves and that we do not see any blood spilled this evening and the coming weeks. But also I have to say that from my perspective, I have a lot of faith in the Egyptian people who are not going to succumb to a military dictatorship like they have shown, and they're not also going to accept Islamic fascism. So the worry that, you know, this will be a coup that's going to lead to the army taking over again, I think is legitimate, but also unfounded, because again, the Egyptian people have shown that, you know, it doesn't matter how many coups they do in 2.5 years, but there will be no tolerance for any form of
I'm going to jump in here because we're up towards the end of this half hour. Fidel, I've run out of time. I apologise. I'm squeezing you like a lemon, but I never meant to. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. All of you who've been contributing, thank you very much indeed. You can keep talking about Egypt on our Facebook page. In a couple of minutes, we'll go to Haiti.